storm has finished up here, but hardly slept at all last night, so noisy with the wind.
The cruise to the Bay of Islands was a last-minute decision made 2 months earlier, and because the cruise ship left from Auckland, the plan was to take the ferry from Gulf Harbour, which docks 50 metres away from the Pacific Pearl, our cruise ship. This was a good idea to me, because then we could indulge in a harbour cruise as well as a sea cruise. But on arriving at the Gulf Harbour ferry terminal, we discovered that the storm the previous night had resulted in ferries being cancelled, so the company put us on a bus instead. No problem, as both the ferry and the bus make the trip in about 45 minutes. It was a big thrill for us, as this was our very first journey in Auckland on a bus. From Auckland's Harbour Bridge, we could see that our cruise ship was in port, which was a good sign. But the bad news was that the previous night's storm had prevented the Pacific Pearl from entering Auckland Harbour the night before, and so we had an extra 3 hours to kill before we were allowed to board. Rolled out the red carpet for us. Right.
Just get you to sign the bottom for me and just write the little name along here.
Let's go. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Pacific Pearl.
Do you book her three?
Because we had checked in online and had no baggage, and this was a non-international cruise, boarding only took a few minutes. Well, one bag's arrived. 1 out of 2. The ship wasn't due to sail for another 3 hours, so it was time for a cup of tea, which solves everything, and dinner at the Plantation Buffet restaurant on deck 12, and then a quick look around the ship. At about 7 p.m, the Pacific Pearl left Queen's Wharf on a beautiful evening with magnificent views of Auckland's central business district. It's been a long time since we've seen Auckland from this perspective. It's a good idea having this grass on here, eh? Yeah, that's the naval base, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before retiring for the night, and after taking part in the emergency evacuation procedures, we took a quick look at some of the ship's facilities. That looks like a coffee shop up ahead, doesn't it? Where those lights are. Wow, look out. Is that the pool, is it?
There you go.
The next day was at sea. We didn't realise that the ship leaves the New Zealand coast and heads out to deep sea to be exempt from casino and liquor laws, and as a result, both of us got seasick. There wasn't a lot for us to do except eat, sleep and go to the gym anyway. Other passengers on the ship made use of the pool, table tennis, restaurant and coffee bars. There was even an art exhibition. At night there were shows, but we weren't up for going to them. The Pacific Pearl was built in France 28 years ago in 1988 and has had a number of owners, names and refits since then. From 2008 it has been part of the P&O Cruises Australia brand, but now it has been sold to a British shipping company, Cruise and Maritime Voyages, and they take possession in March 2017. Lillian is no stranger to this vessel. In 2011, she and her sister Naomi sailed from Auckland to Sydney on a 3-night cruise and returned to New Zealand by air. Due to logistical reasons, I didn't go on this particular cruise. The main difference that Lillian noticed was that in order to cut costs, only 2 restaurants, the Waterfront and Plantation, were complimentary and the rest were pay restaurants. The next morning we arrived in the Bay of Islands, and as there was no wharf for cruise ships, the passengers wanting to go on shore were shuttled by the ship's lifeboats. Lillian decided to go ashore to meet up with her sister Naomi and her husband Brent, as they had driven up from Whangarei for the day. The tender takes you to the wharf at Waitangi, and from there a free shuttle bus takes you to Paihia, a distance of about 3 kilometres. Lillian then took the ferry to Russell to meet up with Naomi.
Going to meet Naomi for lunch. Going to meet Naomi at Waitangi, where the little ship tender pulls up, and then we're going to go to Helena Bay for the cafe there. It's very nice.
Okay, good morning folks. Welcome to the Bay of Islands. A bit of information for you that will hopefully get you back to your ship on time this afternoon. There's 5 buses on for you, and we leave the tender wharf, which is on your left hand side now. You come over the bridge, you go into the small town of Paihia.
Lunch at Helena Bay with Naomi and Brent. Yeah, Teal Bay with Buddy.
Meanwhile, back on the ship, I went to the gym, wandered around the cabin, which I thought was better laid out than many hotels. The cabin had a fridge too. The Pacific Pearl is registered for 1,900 passengers and 700 crew, although on this cruise there were only 1,700 passengers. At this time of the year, it does the Auckland to Bay of Islands circuit, and over the winter it heads back over to the Asia-Australia circuit. The problem with old ships like this is the lack of balcony cabins and a limited number of window cabins, but that's more than made up for by the price we paid. This cabin was $300 per night for 2 people In contrast to Royal Caribbean's Allure of the Seas we went on last August, which was a crippling $1,000 a night for two. The ship is 247 metres long, 32 metres wide and has 13 decks, 11 of which are passenger decks. Gross tonnage is 63,500. Compare that with the Allure of the Seas at 225,000 tonnes, or the small ship we sailed to Antarctica on at 8,000 tonnes. The Bay of Islands is only 160 kilometres north of where we live, and it's a place we've been to lots of times by road. For that reason, as well as feeling a bit seasick, being on the ship was more interesting to me than being off it. The Pacific Dawn is a regular abode for some of our richer friends who live near us. In fact, we noticed that a few people who lived in our local area are on board, and we had afternoon tea with Chris, who lives not far from us, and her daughter Kushla. Chris had a really interesting career and lots of interesting stories to tell about her life. About 20 couples on the ship had something to celebrate, and many were on board for an Easter break. I'm not sure why we chose to be here, as neither of us like being on ships and ferries, and we had no special occasions in our lives at this time. I think I came for the excellent cuisine. The variety of food available was extraordinary. The Bay of Islands is a pretty place, and a lot of Aucklanders come here for vacation purposes. Compared with previous years, the entertainment budget had been cut, so lower priced musicians were employed. The next day the captain weighed the anchor with some enormous scales and we headed back to Auckland. Once again we headed out to the Pacific Ocean at a leisurely speed of 10 knots, half the maximum speed of the ship. For our final night we dined at the waterfront restaurant aft on deck 7. A really nice a la carte meal, but I actually preferred the buffet style at the other complimentary restaurant on deck 12. When we asked for coffee, we just got instant coffee. As it was the final night, the waiting staff put on some additional entertainment. And we watched them again. The next morning we were amongst the first to disembark as we had no baggage, so we headed to the Gulf Harbour ferry, then took the bus back home.